Okay, so you want to learn how to do photography. Great, this is a good place to come. I'm going to try my best to teach you very briefly how to use a camera. Now, I can't show you my DSLR because that's kind of what I'm recording this on, so I'm going to show you on this 70-year-old film camera. Principles are all the same, just the places to find all the settings and the amount of settings are all going to be different. Some of the setups are going to be different, so if you really need to find out where to find the settings to change, I suggest that going to your camera's guide, or like look up online, like, hey, how do I change the ISO or shutter speed of my camera, that kind of stuff. But for this camera, it basically has two things that I can adjust for my photos to be best. I have what's called the aperture, and I have what's called the shutter speed. There's also the range, which is also just basically my focus, but since this is an old camera, it was called a range. This is a rangefinder camera. I'll go into more depth into this camera later, because I actually am going to do a video on this camera and taking pictures in film, because it sounds like amazing stuff. I even have some film to show you guys ISO, which is another thing cameras can do. So I want to just go over some of these things and quickly teach you what they do and how to adjust the picture the best. Obviously, I don't have the DSLR, but for my Canon Rebel T6, I will be just doing some B-roll on that, so you guys can still see how to do it on my digital camera. But for now, demonstration using this guy. So I want to start out with the aperture. The aperture is based in the lens. It is basically how big or small the hole is to let light through to the camera sensor, or in my case, to the camera film. It's a sensor for digital, and then it's of course film for a film camera. Makes sense, right? But for this camera, the aperture is on the front. It's actually on the lens, and I'll give you guys a bit more of a close-up here in a second of what it's actually doing, because you can actually see the light. You can actually see the hole opening and closing as I move that. But for digital cameras, the aperture, or otherwise known as the f-stop, will be generally on either the screen or again on the lens. It'll probably be near the middle or the front, around the lens. Generally, if you look up how the lens works, you can easily find out where it is. But basically goes from low, my lens goes from a 3.5 up to a 16, and that is the size of the opening. The smallest number, the biggest opening, the bigger number, the smaller opening. Kind of confusing, but it'll make sense later on. You have to learn the stuff, and it eventually will make sense. So the smaller the opening, the more stuff's in focus. Like, the less light comes in, the more stuff's in focus. I'm not entirely sure why that works the way it works, but it just does. So if you have it on, for example, my 16, if I take a picture of like a landscape, that's great, everything's in focus. But if I want to get a picture of a model, I want to lower my aperture down to like a 3.5 or a 4 or like a 6 maybe. It's still a little high, but you'll still get more blurry, because you'll get more of a face, like, let me try to rephrase that. You'll get more stuff closer to you in focus if you actually have it focused in the first place, and you'll have more of the background blurry. The downside to that is the bigger the opening, the brighter the image, which means you'll have to adjust other settings on the camera to get it to be right. So if you have the shutter speed, and we haven't gone over this yet, but if you have the shutter speed at like 600, which I can't go to on this, and you have it at like an 8 on here, and it's perfectly lit, but then you're like, okay, I want to do a close-up on someone, and you move it back down to your 3.5. When you try to get a close-up with the same shutter speed, it'll probably be a fairly either washed out or dark image, depending on whatever your shutter speed and ISO are set to. Generally, if you're going lower, it'll be a washed out image, which means it'll be really white and gross. Basically, you want to just adjust your shutter speed and your ISO if you have a digital camera, and just try to make the settings fit closely together without going a little bit too wonky. And there's easy ways to tell. You just have to take multiple pictures, changing the settings, looking at the picture if you're taking it on digital, all that kind of stuff. So now that we have an idea of how aperture works, let's move on to the shutter speed, which shutter speed is quite what it sounds like. It's just exactly what it sounds like. It's how fast the shutter works. But what is the shutter? The shutter is basically the thing that goes tsh. If you actually listen on a digital camera, which there's the sound there, it is the quick opening and closing of what is called the shutter. It's just the thing that lets the light through to the sensor or the film. Basically, the lower the number, the slower it is, and then the higher the number, the faster it is. And on a camera like mine, it only says 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, and 300, which is odd numbering, I know, and they're all evenly spaced. It's really weird. It's really dumb. But these are all of a second. So it's a tenth of a second, it's 20th of a second, it's 300th of a second, which the higher the number, the faster the shutter speed. Also, the faster the shutter speed, the less light comes in, because it only opens for a short amount of time. So you can imagine, the higher the aperture, if I put mine on 16, and if I put the shutter speed onto 300 and take a picture, it's going to be really dark in an environment a bit like this. Even though there's a lot of lights on me, it'd actually still be pretty dark. Outside, works pretty nicely. That's pretty much all that I can change on this camera. I also have the range, which for my rangefinder camera, you don't really have to worry about. It's just basically your focus, which every camera has. So I'm going to put this off to the side and quickly talk about ISO. ISO for film comes pre-made. This is 200 and this is 100 ISO. The lower the number, the darker the image, which is opposite of aperture. Aperture is the lower the number, the brighter the image, but you just have to remember that for aperture, it's the size of the hole that you're making. So it's a really big hole, more light's going to come through, therefore it's going to be brighter. However, with film, or with ISO, ignore the fact that I just said film, with ISO, it is a bit more of a focus. So this 100 ISO is great for, say, bright sunny days, because it's the less light needed, or the more light is needed to make this film look right. So it's going to be like a really bright sunny day, maybe even like you're hiking on a mountain out there and you want it to be really nice and really bright, make the colors and everything look really nice. So you have 100 ISO. Once again, with a digital camera, you can adjust all this stuff, but if you're making film, you have to buy all these. So it's a bit of a different toss-up kind of thing. So now moving right along to the 200 ISO, this is a bit more of like, it's a bit lighter than the 100 that I was just showing you. It's great for indoor and outdoor use, generally in sunlight and with a flash. So only indoor with a flash, outdoor, I guess during the day. Pretty much that kind of stuff. And then it also actually says 400 ISO on here. 400 ISO is good for probably most occasions. It's the best general use ISO. So if you have a digital camera, set your camera settings to 400 ISO, and it's probably the best you can do. Try to adjust your settings around that. If you can't, you can increase the ISO number. Some cameras go to like 6,400 ISO. Some don't go that high, some go even higher. So you can do quite a range of ISO, but the only downside to increasing your ISO is the higher the ISO, the grainier the image gets. And basically grain is this kind of pixelated dots all over the screen in mostly the dark areas. Like the door right here would have pixelated dots. In fact, it probably does, because this camera is not amazing. But so it's basically what that is. It just creates more grain, which makes your image look more messy, and it makes everything just look a little bit dirtier than otherwise it would. There are ways to get around it. You can get into like Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom, and Adobe Photoshop. There are ways to get rid of the grain a little bit. It also softens the image, so you have to sharpen it and have it more clear. But there are ways to get rid of it in post, but try your best to not have to do that in post. It's better to get all that stuff out of the way in like actually taking the pictures. So we basically covered everything that we really need to cover, but I just want to quickly talk about the image types. Phones generally take images in, say, like a JPEG format, or sometimes even a PNG, but that's more of an editing style, so it's generally a JPEG. JPEG images are compressed images. It is hard and ugly to edit. Most digital cameras, in fact, I want to say all digital cameras, sometimes even phones, my phone has this setting, you can actually set the image type to be what's called RAW. Sounds weird, I know, but basically RAW is just, it is what it sounds like. It's a raw form of the image. You can wash out the sky, but in post, you can select the sky and then darken it. And you can actually get the blues back that you could see with your own eyes. You can actually get the clouds there. You can get details that were in the image that were washed out when you took the picture. You can actually bring those back and have a lot more customizability when editing. So it's a great way for you to fix an image in post. That's kind of what I'm talking about here, is when you have a messed up ISO, it's a lot easier with a raw image to fix the photo. Because when you have a JPEG, it is a flat image. There is nothing you can do. Everything is lost. There's no stored detail about what is actually in the image. Your image is basically gone if you didn't get the settings perfect in your camera when you were getting the picture taken. Basically, that kind of covers everything that you need to know about the basic understanding of a camera. Obviously, there's more detailed stuff, but I can go into more detailed stuff later on if you guys want me to. I can talk about composition and shots and all that stuff, and angles and lighting and getting models and focuses and all sorts of stuff. I can go into more detail if you guys want me to. I can do different kinds of shots if you guys would like. Just let me know if you want to have more information about cameras and have more of these kind of lessons from me. If not, then I will stop and I'll just do things on my own. If you guys are interested, let me know. But that's just about it for this video. It's going to be a slightly shorter one, I'm assuming. I have no idea. Could be longer. I don't know. But that kind of sums everything up. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. If you guys did, let me know. And hit that like button. And if you're new, subscribe. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a nice day. See you guys. I haven't done that in a while. If you liked this video, check out this one right here. This was a couple weeks ago when I did a video on online dating. Or check out this video right here. It's a video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. They're good at doing that. They have a good algorithm. Or hit this button right here. This is the subscribe button. Go ahead and do that. I'm waiting.